Hi there, and welcome to Reformed Acres. Today we are going to be canning up some chicken and some chicken broth. It's actually a 2-day process. We're going to get started with that today with some of our homegrown chicken. We just processed our chickens a couple weeks ago. And so of course there's a lot in the freezer, and for some of that, I just prefer to get them out of the freezer and onto jars on the shelf, or into jars on the shelf. And so there's quite a lot in here. And I probably should pick the smallest ones, but honestly, it would be hard to kind of rifle through that and figure that out. So we are just going to be grabbing about 6. Let me close this. So this is what they look like. This is actually a smaller one, so this is great. We can go ahead and throw this in there, but I'm going to grab 6 and we are going to get them going in the roaster. I'm going to show you guys the entire process of how I do this. It's very, very simple, but what I love about canned chicken is it is just so versatile. If you want to make a quick meal and you don't want to throw this in the Instant Pot, or you don't want to think ahead and kind of roast your chicken, which those are still really easy methods for cooking chicken, but it's just so nice to pop open a jar, great for soups and things like that. And then of course, having shelf-stable bone broth, so good. Just as convenient as the broth that you're going to get in a store, and you did it yourself with your own chickens or with chickens that you bought and cooked yourself. It's just so nice. So I'm going to show you the whole process. It's actually a lot of put it in the roaster and wait, but then we're going to get into the canning process as well to show you guys how to make it shelf stable. And I like to grab the smaller ones because those are the ones that are going to be less desirable for roasting. Because when you roast a bird, you want like a really big, meaty bird, because you want that to go a long way. So this looks like a good one. So I think we'll go with those 6. And obviously we're going to be taking this plastic off, but to see if they'll fit, to get kind of an idea. I think that when I finagle them, they will fit, and as they cook, they'll kind of shrink down a little bit. So I think that this will be totally fine. So I have got my roaster set up here. My little guy is in the warming drawer. The oven is not on and there's nothing in it, but if you see his head poking out, that's where he's at. I really prefer to set this up near the sink because then it's easy to get the water in. So we're gonna take these chickens out and get them on the counter so that we can, no, sir. No. Isn't this just like doing things with kids? But this is a pretty get it going and leave it process. So once we get through this first part with Leo, then we can move on. We can move on to homeschool and all of that. So if you have been around here for a couple videos, you probably know by now, but I have 3 sons. I am pregnant with my 4th son. They are 5 and under currently. So it is a loud household at times, but that is okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to take these and get them out of this packaging, and into the roaster. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to first run them under some water. No, sir. Try to run them under some water. It doesn't have to be like super hot. Really anything is going to be warmer than the freezer. If you've ever gotten like beef from a butcher or something like that, and it's wrapped in like wax paper, so it's in the butcher paper and then the wax paper is underneath. We got that for the first time this year. We got a half beef and I was like, how do you get it out of this wax paper if you don't thaw it first? I always cook ground beef from frozen in the Instant Pot. That's where I'm going with this. If you need to get the packaging off, you can run that wax paper under warm water too, and it really comes right off, because it gets stuck in all those crevices. So that is what I'm doing at this point. We are getting just all of these cut open and into the roaster. So I will not make you sit through this, and I will see you back here when we are filling the roaster with some water and talk to you about temperatures and things like that for getting this chicken cooked up. All of these chickens, cooking 6 chickens at a time. So this is definitely a time saver for sure. Even if you didn't want to can these, you just wanted maybe to shred these up after you cooked them, like shred the meat up and put them in maybe individual freezer bags or something like this. This is definitely a time saver when you have these large roasters, and you can do that. So definitely recommend. So we have got all of our chickens in here. It's quite a lot. They will kind of deflate as they cook down, and this is closed enough for my happiness. So next, what we need to do is we just need to fill this with a little bit of water. There's not a science to this. I'm gonna have to put you down so that I can hold this, okay? Do we want a snack? My boss over here requires a snack. Yeah, snack here. There's some cranberries. So we are gonna be adding some water to this chicken. It's not a science or anything like that. I'm just gonna add a couple quarts just until I feel good about it. Basically what we want to do is we want to get the bottom of this filled a little bit so that as these cook, they're not sticking to the bottom or burning at the bottom or something like that. Put some water in there and you'll be good to go. And then once I feel like I have enough, which I think that that's good, then I'm just going to stick the lid on it. We're not going to season it. We're not going to do anything. Your water, where is your water, sir? Right here on the floor. I'm not going to season it or anything like that. Totally unnecessary to do because we just want regular old chicken so that we can can it. So for the cooking of the chicken, in order to can it, I'm going to take this up to 350. So I'm going to let this cook at 350. I'm not going to do anything to it. I don't need to take this off. I don't need to adjust them. I literally don't need to do anything. I'm going to let this cook for about 6 hours. Again, with everything else in this house and probably yours, there are things happening. It is 9:45-ish right now in the morning. So 6 hours from now is around 3:45. It's going to be around dinner time. So that's where I said it's about 6 hours. 5 hours might be better for my schedule. And when you're canning chicken, you only need to get your chicken cooked about 2/3 cooked. Now you can can raw chicken, but of course we're taking the chicken off of the bone, and it's a little bit easier to work with when it's cooked. But you do not have to have your chicken fully cooked to can it. Of course, follow your canning recipe. So this is not, it's not a big deal if you are cooking this for 4 hours or 5 or 6. You just want to make sure that you have it adequately cooked for the recipe that you're using. And for me, anywhere between 4 and 6 would probably be fine. I have done, I think, as low as 3. So we'll probably take this out around 5 hours, but normally I do 6. So it has been about 4.5 hours. And I checked the chicken with a fork, and I think that we are completely good to go to get this out and start cooling. It does take quite a bit of time, at least I would say half an hour, for the chicken to cool enough to want to touch it. And even then, it is still pretty warm. So it's time to get it out and get it cooling so that we can move on to canning it. My house is quiet right now for nap time, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. So let's get to work. It's definitely difficult to find like enough bowls, I guess, or places to put the chicken to cool it because you want to give it a lot of space. You know what? I think I'm going to do a baking sheet or 2, and then we will put the chicken in these bowls when we actually take it off the bone. Let's just pull out some baking sheets, and that should be better because it will give the chicken space to cool a little more quickly instead of all being piled on top of each other. I am going to go ahead and turn off the heat on the roaster. We'll turn it back on when we put the bones in, and it'll actually be a completely different temperature, but for now, we will just go ahead and flip that off. It is a little bit tricky to get these out of here because they do kind of want to fall off the bone. So I like to use a pair of tongs and some type of strong metal spoon or something like that to kind of help me out. It's very hot, so you want to try to minimize any splashing on yourself because this is very, very hot. These look like they're okay. They're not going to completely fall apart because they didn't cook. They didn't cook the entire 6 hours like I did last time. I just got a later start on this, so I really just want to get these in the canner, and that should show there is some flexibility in this. It is not like you must cook them this long. I mean, you can can chicken that's raw. So I mean, you are totally fine either way. This one looks like it wants to fall apart on me. This bird, it looks like it got a little bit mangled in the scalder. For sure, it is not as cute. Would not have wanted to roast that one, so I'm glad that we chose it. Whew, that's what I'm talking about there. It can be a bit fragile, and it is hot on my hand. I can tell that on some of these, we process these chickens ourselves, but I can tell that on some of these, they didn't get completely gutted. Like there's probably still some organs and stuff in here. I can just kind of tell by the color of the water that is coming out of them. So because of that, I will dump this water that is in the roaster before we do the bone broth and get the bones going. That way we can just have it nice, clean, fresh water. It's really not a big deal, but I feel like it's the thing to do. So that's what we're gonna do. So we'll start with all fresh water when we do the bones. That is completely fine. Sometimes I don't, most of the time I don't, but I just felt like with the kind of schmutz that was coming out in the water that we can just totally start fresh and we won't even have to think about it or worry about it or anything like that. So these chickens are gonna hang out, they're gonna cool. I will probably set a timer for about 30 minutes and then they will still be hot to the touch at that point, but we should have an easier time getting the meat off of them to get them in the canning jars. But while it is cooling, we can go ahead and get our canning supplies set up because once this process starts, it's very quick getting the meat from the chickens into the jars, into the canner. So let's get that set up. So it has been a little while and I have everything set up. So let me show you. So I did go ahead and get the chicken removed from the bones. So I got as much of the chicken off as I could. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but we have the bones back here in the roaster. It's still turned off. And then I have the bones, or I'm sorry, I have the chicken in here in the oven just on the warm setting, just because it cools so quickly and I want it to stay warm so that we can get hot chicken into hot jars. That's what you want to make sure that you do. Same temperature of the product as in the jars so that you don't have any breakage or anything like that. I do have a towel set out, so let me show you the things that I like to keep for canning. When we're doing chicken, you do need to add some water to the top to get the correct headspace. So I have some hot water going here. And then I have got some jars heating up. Now I've got 10 pints in here. They are half filled with water and they are warm at this point. And then over here, I have 2 in my electric canner. If I need 1 or 2 more, I will warm them up quickly and add them. But this is just the pints that I had readily available. And then back here, I have plenty of canning lids. I have regular mouth and wide mouth. This is my favorite brand of jars. I am sure that if you can at all, you have heard of these. These are 4 jars lids. I really love them because I don't have any seal failures with them. I will definitely use ball lids if that's what I can find in the grocery store. So if I run out of these, then I will use ball canning lids, but I do have failures with those. I don't have any seal failures with these, so I will leave my link down below. I believe it gets you 10 or 15% off, which is awesome. And then back here, I do have my gallon bag of rings. That's how I store mine. And then a couple of canning supplies. I still need to grab my funnel, but this is for measuring headspace. And this is for grabbing the jars when they're hot. Again, I will grab the funnel. This is from a canning set that I bought years ago, and I use it all the time. Another thing is I like to have plenty of towels because we need one for the jars to be laid out on. We'll be wiping the rims with vinegar. So it's just a good idea to have 3 or 4 towels when you're canning. So I'm going to pull these out. I think I'll do 5 at a time. And I'm just pouring this hot water back into the sink. When this bowl, when this Dutch oven full of water gets low, I will start pouring it back in there just to make sure that we have enough water in there. But I'm going to start with 5 and just do half and half. I don't want to take all the jars out at the same time because those jars are in there, they're hot, and I want to keep the temperature hot as long as I can. Now my son is the one that unloads the dishwasher for me, so let's see if I can find my funnel or if it's going to take me a minute. So I have the funnel, I did find it, and I mean it is just really simple. We are just going to grab chicken and put it into jars, and I like to pack it in here pretty good. I don't actually think that we need the funnel, to be honest. You don't want to shred up your chicken, but sometimes if it's a really big piece of chicken, I will break it into pieces that are a bit more manageable. No. Yeah, we don't need to be in there. Thank you. And you want to pack down your chicken pretty well. Again, do not just follow me. Grab yourself the big ball canning book. And I think it's like the complete guide to canning, but grab that book or a book with recipes in it and use that, because there are a bunch of steps when it comes to canning. It's not overwhelming by any means. It's definitely doable. As I find bones or things like that, I am just dropping them back in. But canning is definitely totally doable. It just takes a little bit to get used to the steps and to get them down so that they're not stressful. I remember my first batch, I don't know if the first thing I canned was green beans or if the first thing I canned was carrots, but I remember it feeling so stressful, especially the prep, getting out all the items that you would need. That seemed really stressful to me. Not anymore. So definitely just keep going at it, keep practicing, and it will become doable. When I first started canning, I could not do it with kids, and I had fewer kids than I have now. And I would just have to perfectly time things for nap time. Now I can pretty much get it done with my kids around. You have to work around them a little bit, but we figure out ways to get it done. So I am just filling all of these up with the chicken. Again, pressing it down, trying to get them good and filled to, about the amount of chicken that I'm going to want to use in a recipe. And these are packed pretty tightly. So there is definitely a good amount of chicken in here. I am glad that I pulled out my second canner, because I think that there is a chance that we are going to have more than 10 pints of chicken. These were very big chickens. We raised these in our front yard. We raise all of our own meat chickens, so we do not buy chicken from the store, and we either eat them canned or whole. We don't cut them up into parts before we put them in the freezer. So I do like to have canned chicken on because it makes it so much more convenient. Okay, so now that these are packed pretty good and tight, just making sure that I get as much in there as I can. We want an inch of headspace. Again, check your recipe. And that is pretty much where that top little, or the bottom little line of the jar is, but we have that tool that'll help us measure it. So once you've got your chicken in there, now it's time to add the water, because you want to fill it the rest of the way with water. So let me see. I don't remember. Let's use a measuring cup because sometimes that's just easier. So we're just going to grab water, and it's going to fill it pretty fast because there's a lot of chicken in here. So it won't take much water. So you don't want to overdo it. We're going to fill all these up with the amount of water that we think we'll need, just based on how it looks. Once we get these filled with water to close to that 1-inch headspace, we're going to use our little debubbler tool and our headspace tool. So I'm going to take this all around the edges of the jar, between the product and the edge of the jar, and just kind of push it down a couple times. I usually go around 4 or 5 times to different spots on the jar. Push that down and try to get all of the bubbles out. And we're going to do that for all of these. And then once we do that, we will check the headspace and add any extra water. And I'm just kind of pushing these down just a little bit, because debubbling it obviously kind of disrupts the chicken placement. But I can see bubbles popping up. You're never going to be able to get out every single bubble that's in here, but we definitely will try our best. And this is, I would say, a pretty important step, so definitely don't want to miss it. So just push these down, and then we need 1-inch headspace. So this shows your headspace. This is pretty close. We just need a little bit more water. Having the correct headspace is important for things sealing. All right, now that we have the correct headspace on all of these, we are going to wipe the rims with vinegar before we put our lids on. And this is pretty common to do when you've got meat or broth or things like that. because they can be oily or there's residue and things like that. So you want to get all of that off. And then when I do that, I just check around the rim of the jar to make sure that there are no chips or cracks or anything like that that could affect it sealing properly. These are not new jars. What are you doing? He is in. What have you got? What are you doing in there? He's in one of my cabinets. These are not new jars. These are jars that I've reused. So there, technically is a chance that they could have a chip on them or something like that. Okay, so these are all good. So let me go grab my lids and rings. So I have grabbed 1 wide mouth and 4 regular. These are new lids from the box. And one of the things that I do is I do not wash them if they're new from the box. So do your own thing. Choose what you want to do, but I do not wash them just to simplify my life a bit. You are in the warming drawer. I did turn off the oven if anyone is concerned, and it was only warming. All right, so I am just putting the lids on and then screwing these to fingertip tight, which is always kind of confusing for me on how much they should be tightened. I feel like that's so vague, but that's what we're doing. Oh, I got the wrong size. So you want them to be tight enough, obviously, that they're on, but they do need a little bit of space for canning. So you're not going to be, screwing them on there, torquing them on there, nothing like that. Okay, so we are going to stick these in the canner now. They're a little warm. The jars are pretty warm. And then we will start on, I'm stepping over this baby. We will start on the next batches. I'm going to heat this just a little. And so this is going to be the process for all of them. So this is just what I'm going to be doing, and I will see you guys back here when we are ready to actually start processing. So we have all of the chicken canned up. This canner is full with 10 pints, and then we did end up needing to use this one for 2, and I wish we could have fit more in there, but that's totally fine. 12 pints from 6 chickens. I feel really good about that. This is the canning book that I like to use, and it says that we need to process these pint jars for 75 minutes. So that's what we're going to be doing, and I will check back with you guys when that processing time is done and we are taking them out to see how they did. I actually almost forgot that we need to get this filled back up with water and get this broth going. So I am just going to fill this up with cold water all the way. So once I get this filled all the way to the top, I will be setting it to 200 degrees, and it will be on that covered for about 24 hours. I will can this sometime tomorrow. It might be slightly less than 24 hours. It might be slightly more, probably less. You could leave this for 48 hours. It's really however long you want and how rich you want your bone broth to be. So mine will definitely be under 24 hours, probably somewhere closer to 18 or so. And then we'll get it canned up. So I'm just going to set this to 200. The canners are going. They are on their way. And we are about to make bone broth with no extra work and be able to can that up tomorrow and have that shelf stable for convenience as well. So it is day 2 of this chicken and broth process. I was going to film taking the chicken out of the canner last night, but I honestly was just super tired and beat. So everything came out well. It's sealed well. It's awesome. And now we're moving on to broth. And the canning of the broth is even simpler. We already have warm broth or hot broth. I have the stovetop canner with 7 quarts in there, and then the electric canner with 4 quarts. And we should be able to fill those up all no problem, and maybe even have a quart or 2 for the fridge because this is filled to the brim. So this has just been going all night since we last left off yesterday by filling it up. It's definitely decreased in level just a bit, and it has just been going on 200 until now. It is about 1:20 in the afternoon, so it is not even close to 24 hours, but that is okay. It's still going to be great. It's still going to be delicious, and we're going to get it canned up because that is the time that we have to do it. It would be fine to leave this for up to 48 hours, maybe even more, however long you want, but I don't want to be dealing with this for a third day. So we are just going to do it now, and it's just going to be great. And this process is super, super simple. So let me get started and show you how. So like I said, we have our jars warming up because we do want to put the warm liquid in the warm jars. And so I am just going to turn this roaster off because we don't need to keep it on anymore. Well, we're just going to use this measuring cup. It's got a nice long handle because this is very hot. But we are just going to be straining out broth. I have a mesh strainer over this bowl just so that we're not getting any chunks of anything in there. This broth doesn't have anything in it. There is no salt, nothing like that, and I'm not going to add any salt before I start. I will just salt to taste in my recipes. That's how I do all of my canning. I never salt anything. I don't salt vegetables. I don't salt meat. No broth. I don't season my tomato sauce. It is just the vegetable or the product and water. Now we will have to strain this out a couple times and do this in a couple batches because I am kind of just limited by the size of the bowl and the size of space that we have here. But that's not a problem at all. It's good to do it in batches anyway, so all of your jars stay the same temperature. This broth is pretty warm. I definitely prefer to let it cook a little bit longer, but like I said, with the things that we have going on today, this is the time that I have to do it, and we are going to be happy with that. Stick that back over, and then let's grab some jars to go ahead and get filled. I just got back from picking up some library holds for my son, and he's happily reading them. It is nap time for the littles, so we have just enough time to get this done. This processing time is so much faster than the chicken. The chicken was 75 minutes, and this is 25, I believe. Of course, I'm going to check the ball canning book, but it is just a very quick process and very easy. There's no air bubbles to get out, nothing like that. So this is just so much easier. We are going to grab our funnel just so that it's not getting super messy all over the jars and just start ladling it in. And you can tell, like I have different broth on my shelf right now, and you can tell how long the broth cooked by how pretty and golden it is in color. I run through this broth so fast. We like to cook our rice in it. We'll add it to soups, anything that you would normally use a chicken broth for. This is great for it. So sometimes I've got the time to let it go for 48 hours. Sometimes, like today, it's not even a full 24. And like I said, we're going to have to do this in a couple batches, because this is not, I mean, this is just an instant pot, so it's not massively large. But now that we've got it kind of like halfway full, we can do a better job of pouring it in there. And we'll check our headspace, of course. If any of these are too low or too high, we will adjust that. We're looking for a 1-inch headspace. Check your recipe, of course, always. This is not necessarily a tutorial on how to do it, but just more showing you how to do it. But of course, you always want to follow your canning recipe, or at least I do. So we're going to add some more in here and grab those last 2 jars out of the stovetop canner. And it always looks like there's not going to be enough for all the jars, but this roaster is incredibly deep, so it's very, very deceiving. Getting an arm workout with all the scooping. I'm sure that there is a more efficient way to do it. This is just how I do it. Just trying to get it done quick with the tools I already have. Go ahead and pull out the other 2 jars. And I have the 2 canners, and to be honest, I love both of them. I use them both for different reasons. If I have the ability to do a small batch of something, or get to use my preferred method of canner, I sure do love my electric canner. I started with the stovetop canner, and I love it because it does water bath, it pressure cans, it can do a lot of jars at a time, as compared to the electric canner, which is only 5 pints or 4 quarts. But the electric canner, it's like push a button and you're done, basically. And that has been really helpful for me as a busy mom. So in the summer, when I have green beans coming in and things like that, I will often just be doing a batch of green beans a week. in a small batch, and that is how I fill my pantry. It's just so much easier for me than having to be hyper aware of the pressure in the stovetop canner. But for days like today and yesterday, when I'm doing chicken or broth or tomato sauce, where there's just a lot of volume to get canned, we usually pull them both out. And it's great to have that additional space for some jars. But if you are not comfortable canning, I think that an electric pressure canner is a great place to start. This electric canner water baths as well. I'm not sure if it water baths both sizes. It might just be pints. So you'll want to check that. But I have the Nesco electric canner, and I will link it below. There's also a Presto brand. So before I chit chat more about that, let's fix our headspace. So we need an inch headspace. And some of these I can tell are not quite there, very close. And so we are just going to get these all to an inch. And because it's liquid, there's no debubbling or anything that we need to do, which is really nice. I'm telling you, canning broth is so straightforward. And honestly, if you don't have chicken that you want to can, that's totally fine. You can just, like if you're cooking a roast chicken or even making some chicken thighs or something like that, just save all of those bones and make some bone broth out of it. You might see in a canning recipe that you should chill your broth first and get the fat off of it. And when I canned up some beef broth, I definitely did that because the fat content was really high. I can see some fat on the top of these, but it's a very small amount compared to what it was when I did the beef bones. So you might find that it says to chill it, and if that is what you're most comfortable with, you should do that. This is a big roaster. I would not have any way to stick that in the fridge or enough bowls or enough fridge space to get this chilled. So I have done this recipe many, many times with our homegrown chickens and have not chilled it. And it has been totally fine. But again, you got to do what you're comfortable with in your house. And I think one of the things with canning is just the more that you learn, the more comfortable you get, the more you learn why a recipe tells you to do certain things. And then you can decide from there on if that thing is really important for you and your family to do or not. Now, I will say canning, it's very important that you do follow the instructions. So if you're nervous about something, just follow the instructions. Never going to lead you wrong. But this is something that I do. I do not feel the need to chill it. I've never had a seal failure because of not chilling it. So I feel good about it. I am going to check these and make sure they don't have any chips. I don't remember if I did that. They are good. And I like on these jars that are really hot to use a towel to hold it. And we're just going to do fingertip tight again. Sometimes I have tightened it too much and had some problems. Even after doing this many times, after canning for years, I still have issues. I still have things that go wrong, and it's just all part of the process. So if you're canning and you have a batch that didn't turn out quite like you would like or had hoped, we've all been there. I'm still there a lot of times. So you just keep trying and learning, but I am pretty good at broth and chicken. I think last time I totally torqued down the lids too tight, and I was using a different brand of canning lids, and I did have a couple failures on my broth. But I do love these 4 jars lids because I don't have that problem, and I've been working on not tightening the lids too much. And I was talking about the electric pressure canner a little while ago. So if you're busy or you're just getting into canning, or you have a glass stovetop that is not rated for canning jars, you don't feel comfortable doing it, you don't have a burner that's big enough, an electric pressure canner might be a really good option for you. So we are just getting these in the pressure canner, and then we are going to start the processing time for the amount that is specified. Like I said, I've got 4 more that I'm going to put in the electric canner and get that going, and then the rest I will put in the freezer. But canning chicken and broth is just this simple. It's really not that complicated of a process. It does take a little bit of time, as you've seen. We have been here intermittently throughout the past couple days doing things in the kitchen. So if you have a couple days where you can be at home, if you're a homesteader or homeschooler or something like that, or you've got kids, you probably are anyway. But if you can get this to work around your schedule or even do this on a weekend, it's really not that much time actually working on the canning. It's just a lot of time of things cooking or waiting for things to can and just kind of being present for that. But it is actually really easy and really beginner friendly. If you're concerned about canning meat or anything like that, I highly encourage you to give this a try. Pressure canning and canning meat, they are not as scary as you might think, and they're actually one of the things for me that is the most rewarding to have on the shelf. When you have broth and you have canned chicken, you are just a couple steps from whipping up an easy soup or an easy chili for your family, and it really, really simplifies mealtime. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, but until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.